Good evening and welcome to the City of Loveland Candidate Forum. My name is Sidna Rashid and I will be the moderator this evening. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters and the City of Loveland. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which has fought since 1920 to improve our system of government, to educate citizens about the issues, and to encourage them to vote. This forum will last 2.5 hours. During the first part, we'll hear from the 5 candidates running for Mayor of Loveland. Then we'll hear from the 9 candidates who are running for the 4 city council seats. This is a mail ballot election. Each registered voter who lives within the city limits of Loveland will receive a ballot in the mail. We would like to thank the Reporter Herald, who has given us a lot of publicity, and their mayoral debate, which was held on September 21st, is available for viewing on the Reporter Herald website. This debate is being filmed and will be shown 3 times a week on the City Channel, which is Channel 16. I would like to thank the members of the League of Women Voters who are helping this evening. Susan Bonzel organized the forum. Mary Lou Linton and Deb Babowski will collect questions from audience members. Marilyn Heller and Frances Moore will screen the questions for duplication and then pass them to me to ask the candidates. Our timekeepers are Wanda Mayberry and Dixie Schmatz. They will give the candidates a 30-second warning and will let them know when their time is up. We would appreciate it if the audience would hold their applause until the end of each session. Each session will follow the same format. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves. After each question, they'll have 1.5 minutes to respond, and at the end, they will receive a minute to sum up. Now for the first part of our forum, the 5 gentlemen who are running for mayor of the City of Loveland. The mayor presides over city council meetings and is a public face of Loveland. The term for mayor is 2 years. Everyone who is a registered voter and a resident of the City of Loveland votes for the mayor. The 5 candidates who are running are sitting from my left, Mr. Cecil Gutierrez, Mr. Dave Clark, Mr. Walt Skowron, Mr. Glenn Rousey, and Mr. Alexi Graywall. You will each have 1.5 minutes to introduce yourselves and to explain why you would like to be mayor. We'll start with Mr. Gutierrez.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Sidna, for the kind introductions, and to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum this evening. I am Cecil Gutierrez. I'm a long-term resident of Loveland. I moved here in 1976 to be the first band director at Thompson Valley High School when it was brand new. Moved here with my wife Kay and our daughter Jinya, and then shortly thereafter, within about 6 months, our son was born here, son Joel, and I spent 25 years here in the city as an educator, high school band director at Thompson Valley, and then an assistant principal at Walt Clark Junior High, and then decided that where I could make the most impact on students was directly as a band director and as a teacher back in the classroom. So I went to Loveland High School, where I retired in 1999. I also have almost 30 years of military experience. Was chief warrant officer and a commander. Had a lot of experience in leadership positions in the military, on active duty, National Guard, and the Reserve. I have small business experience since then, having worked at Travel Leaders as the group coordinator and sales consultant there. And I have all of the proven leadership skills that it takes, having worked with the military and in the school system as a leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, and thanks all who have put this on. My name is Dave Clark, and again, a longtime resident of Loveland. I've served on the Loveland City Council for the past 6 years and as Mayor Pro Tem for the past 2 years. During that time, I've filled in for Mayor Peelan in his absence on several occasions for various city functions and meetings. So I believe I do understand the responsibilities of mayor. I've lived in Loveland for 46 years. For 40 years, I've been involved in my father's local construction business, and for the last 20 years, I've been working as the president and general manager and part owner of that business. I firmly believe that our local small businesses are the backbone of our community. Without them, we would not have a successful community like we have today, and it's that simple. As a city, we need to do all we can to promote business-friendly policies and procedures to help them with their growth, expansion, and their basic business needs. I believe the city has done well in some areas. There's some areas we need to improve on. With my background and experience in business and in city government, I feel I have the ability to continue in that work and do some of the things that I have been doing. I've been working on several committees on planning and zoning regulations and water conservation policies and so on. I want to continue this work at making our city as business friendly as I can, and that is one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor of Loveland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Skowron?
Yes. Thank you for coming this evening. Thank you for your interest in public affairs. Your votes are very important for our democratic way of government. Serving the public as mayor in Loveland during the next 2 years is not going to be an easy street walk. It's going to be a big challenge. So whoever you select, the electorate for mayor will have to make a real hard choice in real hard times. You know, during these unpredictable economic times, many state and federal mandates are going to be put before us. We have a recession that's second to none. So, as your mayor, there's going to be a compelling reason for us to make new and hard decisions. I believe, with my 45 years in public service, that I could fill those needs that you all will need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skowron. Mr. Rousey?
Thank you. Thanks to the League of Women's Voters to allow us to be before the audience tonight, and thanks to those who are in the audience. I'm Glenn Rousey, running for the position of mayor. I was first elected to City Council in 2001 and then re-elected for another 4 years in 2005. My wife Sherry and my youngest daughter Annalisa, we moved from the Midwest, Illinois, to Loveland about 12 years ago. Since that time, I've been full-time and adjunct faculty member with Ames Community College, retired as fire marshal from Rock Island Fire Department in Illinois. One reason I'm running is I still personally have a strong desire to serve the community. Another reason is for me, it's that time to move up to the next level of responsibility, that of mayor. I think in 8 years I've looked at all issues from all sides and tried to make the best decision I could that would be beneficial for the citizens of Loveland. In 8 years, I think I've gained the knowledge and the experience and the expertise to serve in the capacity of mayor for the city of Loveland. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Graywall?
I'm going into politics for one reason, and that's to make a difference. And that's the only reason. I intend to serve Loveland, the northern Colorado region, serve, strengthen, and protect in this region where I live, in the state of Colorado where I was born, in the country that I have pledged my allegiance to and represented in over 20 countries in this world. I'm a prophetic man under an end-time burden. I can see farther into the future than all of these four men combined, and with the exception of Mr. Skowron, no one seems to be bringing up the issues of the day. The first thing I'm going to do is give a voice back to the people. The voice that I hear is that it's an unfair playing field. And I've already spoken that directly to Chad, and I'll hold him responsible to reinvest into downtown. Beyond that, the greatest misconception about me is that I'm a nice guy, because I'm not. I'm a tough, hard-nosed leader. I got my feet on the street, and I mean business. And a vote for me is a vote that's going to put the responsibility into the community, because I'm going to require things of people.
Thank you very much. So for the first question, we'll start with Mr. Clark. As mayor, what would you do to keep my taxes down? If services need to be cut, which ones would you suggest first?
Thank you. I believe that we have a strong tax system as it is right now. I don't see a need to increase our sales tax or property tax or any other taxes other than the lodging tax that we probably will talk about here shortly, but that's a different matter. So our taxing system is correct where it's at. It needs to stay there. I don't see any reason to increase taxes. We are in a tough economic time right now. We just recently had some budget cut proposals come back to from the city manager and the city staff, which in my opinion they did a extremely good job to try and limit the impact on the citizens of Loveland, and yet still cut about $6 million out of next year's budget. If these times continue, we have millions of dollars of reserve for various purposes. These can be used if we need to. In addition, further cuts may be coming. That will be coming as recommendations from city staff, and then council will look at those and decide how to go about that and make those final determinations. My personal belief is our safety system needs to stay intact, police and fire and other issues like that really protect the citizens. Beyond that, I'm going to rely heavily on the city staff to come up with areas again where they can help cut budget and still maintain the level of quality we have here in Loveland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Scowron, the same question. As mayor, what would you do to keep my taxes down? If services need to be cut, which ones would you suggest?
That is a very good question. What we need to do is to understand and embrace changes that are taking place beyond our control. We don't live on an island. We have to live globally now instead of just individual city by city. We have 14.5 million people presently officially unemployed. Yet there are only 2.5 million jobs currently in the United States to provide employment for 14.5 million people. So what we need to do is enhance our economy, and the only way you can do that is to have people have jobs that are self-sufficient with benefits to make this the same wonderful community it always will be in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Scowron. Mr. Rousey, as mayor, what would you do to keep my taxes down? If services need to be cut, which ones would you suggest?
Thank you. Two major taxes that you're going to pay in any municipality, and that's your property tax and your sales tax. We haven't had a rate increase in sales tax for a considerable length of time, nor have we for the property tax. We need to make sure that the council does not enact policies or projects that will be directly related to any type of a tax increase, either sales or property tax. And I said this before, where I came from in Illinois, my house, the same value that we have now, the difference in taxes is $7,200 in Illinois and $1,600 in Loveland. So there's a vast difference. And the reason for that is directly related to a loss in property tax. Loveland needs, we all are in favor of the small stores, but we need to be aware that some of the larger stores, retail businesses, gives us the needed sales tax to keep our property taxes down. So we need to be aware of not increasing sales taxes for projects and to make sure we have the revenue to ensure that we have proper taxes to run city government. As far as cuts, if at all possible, I have always been in favor, and I voiced this at city council meeting, I would rather have a reduction in wages than I would a reduction in workforce. That is not what the survey among city workers voted for, but I would rather have the reduction in wages than cuts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rousey. Mr. Graywall, as mayor, what would you do to keep my taxes down? If services need to be cut, which ones would you suggest?
I don't know that it's going to be that easy to keep taxes down. There probably will have to be some type of adjustments, both from the citizens. Citizens of a free country have to pay taxes. We might have some issues. I don't know that we are going to be able to totally sidestep that. In order, the services that are going to be cut, first of all, is going to have to be city expenses, and it'll probably be wages. But the thing we have to do is we have to tap in to the things that are in place in the northern Colorado region, and we have to become the heart of that heart. And that, quite simply and very plainly, is everyone can see is the green industry. It's what Obama is pushing, it's what Ritter's pushing, and we need to hook up with Mr. Marostica, and we need to make sure that we get those industries here, and we need to get our feet into them and be a leader in that area. If we don't increase our revenue, we're going to have all kinds of problems. And in the meantime, there are going to be cuts, and they're probably going to have to cut recreational things for adults, our playtime. And try to keep things intact, especially for our kids. We need to keep, we're going to have to trim the fat as people. We're going to have to invest into our children. It's obvious. This recession is not going away. Read the newspaper. And I think the people that are out there, the voters, are reading the newspaper. It's all bad news. The FDIC is just another one of those things going under.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gutierrez, as mayor, what would you do to keep my taxes down? If services need to be cut, which ones would you suggest?
Well, first of all, I think we've got to have a quality economic development policy. And we've got to make sure that we've got multiple economic development centers. We can't depend on one economic development center for driving the sales taxes for the entire city. If issues arise and you in that particular economic center, and especially when economic issues arise like we have right now, people will spend their money as close to home as possible. So we've got to make sure that those economic development centers are close to where the people live. And we've got to make sure that we're working to develop those multiple economic centers within the city. The other thing is that we have to pay for the services that we want. It has been my experience in the city of Loveland for the 33 years that I have lived here that when the school district or the city has factually given the citizens what they are in need of paying for, the citizens will step forward and raise the taxes if they so think that's the real need. When they see the real need, the citizens have stepped forward. Now, I'm not advocating at any time any kind of a tax increase, but I'll give you an example. In 2002, the citizens of this community saw there was a need to help our transportation system in the city. And in that transportation system, they voted to allow us to keep the excess Tabor revenues for 10 years. And it has kept our transportation system at the very top level within the region.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. This question will start with Mr. Skowron. This is kind of a long one. Last year, the City Council gave a $900,000 cash incentive to Colorado VNet in exchange for a promise of at least 250 new jobs. Last week, Colorado VNet closed its doors. Its future is in doubt. Explain your position regarding the VNet closing and public cash incentives.
Well, as a 37-year veteran of Hewlett-Packard, I know the CEO of VNet. He's an entrepreneur, started 5 businesses in our community. 2 have failed and 3 were immensely successful. VNet would have not been into trouble if the banking industry didn't provide the kind of financing that he needed to keep the payroll that he had at that present time. There was another article in the local newspaper that it looks like that he has found some angel investors that will get VNet back on its feet. But most important, as a member of the subcommittee in the city for economic development, we have terminology called clawbacks. Okay, the CEO of VNet will return the monies that were advanced to him to expand his business if this does not materialize. And this is a written contract, and he and his wife personally signed that commitment. So that's no danger to the public, to the city coffers, and it's a great way to bring more employers into Loveland, which we need desperately to maintain our quality of life.
Thank you. Mr. Rousey, would you like me to repeat that whole?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. No, you're fine. Thank you. It's a little bit too early to tell, and I voted for the $900,000 that VNet received to relocate and to move into Loveland. A lot of that was based on past history, or history of past businesses that the owner has been involved in. It looked at the presentation before council that it was a viable and growth company that would benefit Loveland. Three things can happen. One is that they are completely gone, in which case he will owe the city $450,000. The clawback that we voted on was $200,000 per job by 2012, up to 250 jobs. Or he can give it all the money back, which he has indicated that he will. Or the company can turn around, get other investors, the economy will turn around, and it can be a great company and of great benefit to the citizens and the city of Loveland. So any of those three are possibilities at the time, and I still believe if we can help new businesses that want to relocate into Loveland, and we look at the issue and we believe that it's of benefit to the citizens and the city, then I think we made the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Graywall, should I read that question for you again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Last year, the City Council gave a $900,000 cash incentive to Colorado VNet in exchange for a promise of at least 250 new jobs. Last week, Colorado VNet closed its doors. Its future is in doubt. Explain your position regarding the VNet closing and public cash incentives. I guess if you could publish cash incentives as a generality also.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think it's, number one, it was symptomatic of a lack of foresight. Obviously, the issues in the banking industry, they've been known, that the banks have been playing games with our money. Secondly, I think it's also somewhat symptomatic of, in Walt's words, not really giving due diligence. But I wasn't there, I wasn't involved in the discussion, so I really don't know. But what I will say is that in the future, that these types of things need to be really scrutinized, and I think from what I understand, the city staff already sees that and wants to address that. Whether or not the politicians do or not, I don't know. I will. I want to backload incentives to everybody, including the McWhinneys. You prove it to me, and I'll back you. But if not, buck stops here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Graywalt. Mr. Gutierrez, the same question.
Sure. I think I got it.
You got it.
Colorado VNet, incentives are a very interesting part of today. However, cash incentives, in my opinion, are probably the worst kind of incentive out there when you front load them, even with clawbacks, because in the research that I did prior to Colorado VNet, and I voted against it, not because I don't want to bring jobs to the city and not because I'm not business friendly, but because my first responsibility is to ensure the interests of the citizens are met and protected. And I did not feel that in this particular incentive that was going to take place, because the clawback provision really only allowed us to claw back $340,000, not the $900,000 that we've set out there. Now, if the applicant actually gives the city back $900,000, wonderful. But we've got to ask every time we do these cash incentives, is it fair to the taxpayers? Is it fair to future residents and city councils? Does it create unfair advantage for any individual or corporation? And does it achieve the city's economic development goals? Cash incentives, if that corporation goes out of business, and we may get lucky in this particular case, but Pueblo did not, and if that corporation goes out of business and you have a clawback provision and they're bankrupt, where are you going to get the money to claw back?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Clark, would you like me to read the question?
No, I don't need that, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I don't need to repeat what's been said, but the story is still not finished in the Colorado VNet saga. Mr. Byerwalter signed a personal guarantee for the $900,000. The city attorney and other officials personally looked at his personal financial statement and reported on that before that thing was set in place. Therefore, the cash incentive that was given to him was a good thing, and the city is very well ensured that will come back. Incentives, for the most part, have been a great thing for Loveland, and we've done several of them over the last several years that I've been involved in them. All of those incentives that I've been involved with have had returns on investment. For example, Colorado VNet, $900,000 investment. The return on that over the years was around $3 to $4 million. That's the payback that the city would receive under various concepts. So the incentive concept is a good one, and we need to continue to use that. The great thing about that is that it's all set up to be unique for each business. We cannot. Every business is different. My business is different than your business. Those incentives that come through have to be tailored to fit those specific needs. This is the main reason why I believe it makes no sense for the city to try to level the playing field for all businesses in this city. They're all different. We live in a competitive world. The city should not try to level out our challenges under the guise of being fair to all. We need to continue with what we're doing and make sure we have strong business-friendly policies in this city to help us do and the businesses do what they're supposed to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. The third question, I think, might be a little bit easier. And we'll start with Mr. Rousey. The words transparency in government have been used a lot recently. What exactly does this mean to you?
It's a matter of opinion among council if the city is transparent enough or not. Everything that we vote on comes at open meeting. We may meet in an executive meeting prior to it coming to a public forum with matters of negotiations, personnel. We just met Monday night, the council, and we did council evaluations of the city manager, the municipal judge, and city attorney. The vote to go into executive session was, we were missing one counselor. The vote to go into executive session was 8-0. That was an executive session dealing specifically with personnel matters. If there is any pay increase that is that will be implemented based on those evaluations, it will be announced and voted on in a public forum. I think we've done a good job of being transparent. If you're going to fire somebody and the council needs to discuss it because it may involve litigation, that is definitely in an executive session atmosphere. It should not necessarily be made public. Anytime there's legal contracts involved where we're trying to negotiate either property values, purchases, then again, that's an executive session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rousey. Mr. Graywall, the words transparency in government have been used a lot recently. What exactly does this mean to you?
It means to be true. Tell the truth. There's a real voice that I hear from a lot of voters, from a lot of people that don't think it's been transparent at all. They feel like a lot of business goes on behind closed doors, and they don't like it. I think the issues are innumerable. And I think it's been a developer-driven process, and there's been a lot that's gone behind people's backs, and that's what people are telling me. What it means to change that is to change that, and that means to while we have to, maybe we don't want to play fair, at least we have to be just. So I think they're two different things. I don't want to level the playing field for any Tom, Dick, and Harry to pass by anything. If you're quality, of course we're going to make concessions toward that in any business, but it's got to be just. And that might not be fair. But so far, the people I talk to don't think it's been just. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, because I want to represent the voice of those people that have been telling me that.
Thank you, Mr. Graywall. Mr. Gutierrez, the words transparency in government have been used a lot recently. What exactly does this mean to you?
Well, I don't want to repeat what Glenn said, but executive sessions are important and necessary in personnel and negotiations matters when we're negotiating for property and so on. But to me, it means that that you have to give the citizens an opportunity to hear all the arguments on both sides of an issue when it comes before the council. And all of those arguments and all of the rationale needs to be heard in a public session. I'm not sure that that has happened all the time. I have to agree with Mr. Graywall that I hear from the citizens out there that they're not hearing all of the rationale. There are people who talk to me out on the street that tell me that they see the votes, but they don't know why some of the councilors voted the way they voted. And that's because not both sides are being heard, and not the entire arguments are being heard. And I think that that's what transparency and what the people out there are wanting, is to hear all the arguments on both sides, want to hear the rationales, and make sure that that what is happening and the decisions that are being made are really aired completely, so they know that everything is on the up and up. And sometimes, believe it or not, perception is really critical. And I think that that's when we have some of the kinds of things that are going on, we have to be sure that that it's perceived properly and not improperly, that improper things are going on.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Clark, the words transparency in government have been used a lot recently. What exactly does this mean to you?
Thank you. Transparency in government has also been said to be open and accessible government, transparency government. A few have stated they wanted that in the city government. I agree. We need it. The problem is some of them that have said that have failed to recognize that we already have an open and accessible government. There are 21 boards and commissions in this in this city, and us, the city councilmen, serve as liaisons to most of those. Those citizens, volunteer citizens that serve on those boards, are constantly looking into all the different departments and issues of the city, finances, fire, and all the different areas. All of these meetings are open to public. All city council meetings are open to public, with the one exception that's been talked about as executive sessions. Those are approved and reviewed by the city attorney so that everything is done legally. No decisions are made in the executive session, and for the most part over the last several years, the council has voted almost unanimously to go into every one of those executive sessions. There's no backdoor deals going on that I know of. I have never been part of those, so I do not know what that's talked about. We do have an open and accessible and transparent government. I'm proud to be part of that. If there's something that's not going on, that's being talked about behind closed doors, then I need to find out about it, and we'll make sure it's opened up. But I think we have an open and transparent government now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Mr. Skowron?
You don't have to repeat it.
Okay.
It's the same question.
It's the same question.
Okay. I think we are confused with two terms. One is transparency and one is effective communications. The problem that many of my constituents have shared with me is that they didn't understand why we were doing certain things. Now, we are a legislative body. We pass on legislative ordinances, and we control the budget. We pass and vote on the budget. But there are many, many operating negotiations that take place in our big city. We have over 700 employees. And we're a big business, a $170 million business. So there are going to be occasions when we're contracting for some sort of service or some sort of real estate, and if it's open to the general public, the price always goes up. So under the counsel of the city attorney, he normally, I don't remember in my last 8 years on council that any council member themselves asked for private session. It always came from staff, and we would vote on the points. The problem is that after we get out of private session, we're bound by legal duty not to share any of the conversations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skowron. The last question, we'll start with Mr. Graywall. What is the biggest challenge facing Loveland, and what solutions would you recommend?
Three challenges facing Loveland. Number one is a structural challenge, and it has issued in the other two challenges. Structural challenges, the city is split into two pieces. One is the Centero Metro District. That whole place, all the businesses out east, is a structural divorce from downtown. It's really an issue of urban planning that wasn't thought through all the way. It's pretty typical of that style of development. That structural divide has brought in the other real two issues, which is an issue of leadership. Who's leading? The city council or the Centero Metro District or private development interests? I think that's the biggest two issues, and there's no leadership. The third one is the social problems that that type of structural flaw brings. I think those are the three problems. I think the number one issue on people's minds is that they want the Centero Metro District to be subject to the citizens of Loveland and not vice versa. And not that we can't cut it off. We have to sustain it, but the relationship has to change, and they have to answer to us and not us to them. That's the leadership issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. Are you finished?
No.
Oh, sorry.
30 seconds, don't I? We'll use them all.
I'm sorry.
Since it's a structural problem, it can be fixed, but we need to figure out how to interrelate the two communities so that we can take advantage of what we have.
Thank you, Mr. Graywall. Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you. I think one of the big issues that's going to be facing the city is how we maintain our level of services when during a time of economic challenge that we're going through right now. It's going to mean that we're going to have to utilize our reserves in a prudent manner. We're going to have to make sure that we're monitoring our budget very, very closely. We're also going to have to be, I think another issue is, as I've mentioned before, is making sure that we diversify our economic development centers. Economic development is going to be a big challenge. It's going to be a big challenge to make sure that we can bring jobs to the city without giving away the farm. there are ways to do economic development without giving away the farm, and that is, I have to tell you a story that I attended a meeting just recently where Kevin Corey of Vestas was at the meeting and was asked the question exactly, what helped bring Vestas to northern Colorado? The biggest thing that he said was that incentives did not play a role. What he said was that Vestas was here because of Governor Ritter and his staff, and because they got people to move obstacles so that they could do business. And that's what we need to do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Well, obviously, as has already been said, the budget is something that's probably priority for all of us. We simply need to watch that, and I don't need to discuss that any further. We've talked a little bit about it, but that's certainly a challenge. Downtown revitalization has been on our plates for many years here in Loveland, and that's another area that needs to be worked on. There's criticism about the Centerra project pulling business away from downtown. Perhaps that's true in some cases, perhaps it's not. I don't know for sure. But focusing on downtown and continuing that process is vital for downtown, but also for the citizens of Loveland. Our next major step downtown is to develop a plan that will entice and encourage private development to come in and work with us and partner there. Recently, the city staff has met with several of these type of people. The results are extremely encouraging. People are interested down there. Obviously not to start digging right now today in this economy, but to start planning ahead for when the economy does turn. We have a great opportunity down there. As mayor of Loveland, the developers are going to be looking to commitments from council for these partnerships. With my business background, some development experience, and experience in the city government, I have the unique capabilities to understand and help these developers and give them the commitments and the confidence that they need to go ahead to pursue our development downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Scourin, the question is, what is the biggest challenge facing Loveland, and what solutions would you recommend?
The biggest challenge is economics. You read in this morning's paper about how many families now are in below livable income. I serve as League of Cities Advisory Commission. I used to be under that board of directors. These are 18,000 cities. And out of 18,000 cities, 9 out of 10 cities in America in 2009, this year, has been cutting their personnel. They have been delaying their capital projects, and they've been modifying their city employee health benefits. And I could give you many, many other things that cities across this nation are doing. What we have been doing very well with the present council and the council members that I've worked with who are no longer serving on council is to have reserves and spend wisely.
Thank you, Mr. Scourin. Mr. Rousey?
Yes, thank you.
Would you like me to repeat?
No, you're fine. Thank you. That's one of those questions, if you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different answers, because everybody has what they think is important to them and what, is a challenge that Loveland needs to address. And we have multiple challenges, as does every community. The economy, which hopefully is on a rebound, I think it is, personally. We have transportation issues, which needs to be addressed, downtown issues. We need to maintain the quality of life that we've grown accustomed to and enjoy so much in Loveland. Job opportunities is a big need. We need to maintain the city services as they need to grow with a higher population base. And we can do that through multiple means. One is economic development. Sometimes incentives have to be given. We can promote Loveland, which will help. Public and private partnerships, they all come into play. So to address one challenge, I'm not sure I can. There's multiple challenges. And what we had 10 or 15 years ago, as far as what we thought was a challenge might be different than today. And I can almost guarantee you 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, there'll be different challenges that we have to face. So it's not an easy solution as challenges change, councils change, economic situations change.
Okay, thank you very much. Now that finishes the question portion, and we will give each candidate 1 minute to kind of conclude and sum up for us how they feel about issues. Mr. Graywall, would you start, and then we'll work our way back towards Mr. Gutierrez.
We face issues that very few of you are willing to consider. Should the other foot drop, that second tower fall, and the economy not get better, is the consideration that you all have to make. You have to take into account all the events that are happening in the world today, and they are not good. And all you have to do is read the Wall Street Journal, and you can see that. If you decide to vote for me, there's the last sentence in the Declaration of Independence is that they pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And that's what being a free citizen of the United States is. So if you decide to vote for me, you're going to have to join me on that ground. Or else please vote for another one of these men.
Thank you, Mr. Graywall. Mr. Rousey?
Yes, thank you. We were told before we started to kind of be nice, to play fair. And I need to say something. I have to disagree with Alexi. He said he was not a nice guy. I personally think he is a nice guy, regardless of what he says. Each of us that you see up here has a different philosophy depending upon the issue. And I personally could tell you who has the best philosophy to serve as mayor. I'll tell you anyway, and I think that's me. I've lived in 3 different parts of the country, California, the Midwest, and here. I know how bad some areas can be based on wrong decisions that were made by city government. I've served on 9 or more different boards and commissions, so again, I think I've got an insight as to what the citizens need and what they desire. And again, 8 years in the city council has given me the experience and the insight, I think, to function as a very good mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rousey. Mr. Scowron?
Yes. Please pick a copy up on your way out this evening of my brochure stating many reasons why I would like to be your mayor. And it also lists all my 45 years of accomplishments in the business world and in servicing the general public. We're at different times. We can't go on past history. We have to be visionaries if you're going to be a mayor. And the mayor's got to have the support of the people, and we can survive no matter how tough it gets, because we're great.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to visit many of our private businesses here in town. And quite frankly, I am simply amazed at the creativity, the ingenuity that we have out there. Some of the businesses that operate in this town, I didn't even know about. And we ship things all over the world that are produced right here and manufactured and designed. It's truly amazing to me, the talent that we have here in this town from small businesses. This is what we need to continue to promote, because it is the backbone of our community. At a breakfast meeting this morning, we were privileged to hear former Senator Hank Brown. He talked of the freedoms we have in this country. He also talked about the eroding of those freedoms that he is seeing, largely due to increasing government involvement in our lives and our businesses. We need to watch out for that. So far in Loveland, we've been good. I want to continue doing that and make sure we have a business-friendly environment. So I ask for your support and your vote as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Mr. Gutierrez?
We do have a great city here in Loveland. I'd like to be sure that we lead the city in the proper direction, and especially with maintaining a great economic development going forward. We have great incentives without using a lot of the taxpayers' money. We've got a great workforce, a quality workforce. We sit right in the middle of a triangle of 3 major universities that provide a high quality education. We have a great public school education system here in the city of Loveland. We can be business friendly without having to spend a great deal of money, and being business friendly does not mean that you give away the farm. Being business friendly means that you get out of the way and help businesses to do business, and that's the most critical thing. I think representing the citizens and the best interests of the citizens is critical. And with all of the leadership qualities and the leadership that I've had, leadership experience that I've had before, I'm going to be a hardworking, diligent, someone who does all of the research and due diligence that is necessary. So if you're willing to vote for an independent mayor, I'm your man.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Thank you very much for coming, all of you. It's encouraging that 5 people are willing to step forward to serve the residents of Loveland. We'll take a 10-minute break before we hear from the City Council candidates. Welcome back to the second part of the Candidates Forum. The City of Loveland is divided into 4 wards or City Council districts. Each ward is represented by 2 City Council members. Every odd-numbered year, half of the City Council members are up for election. The term is 4 years. The City Council serves as the community's legislative body. It enacts city ordinances, appropriates funds for conducting city business, and provides policy direction to city staff. You vote only for the City Council member who represents your ward. There are 9 candidates running for the 4 City Council seats. There's a copy of the ward map, which is available on the City of Loveland website, which should be showing on the monitors now. The pink section over in the east of the city is Ward 4, and then the other 3 wards are stacked up in the western part of the city. Ward 1 is green, Ward 2 is blue, and Ward 3 is yellow. The candidates are seated according to the ward they hope to represent, from left to right. Ward 1 starts on my left. There are 3 people who would like to represent Ward 1. They are Jan Brown, Daryl Klassen, and Adam Konecki. Would you like to start, Mr. Brown, and introduce yourself and explain why you would like to serve on the City Council?
Good evening, and thank you for coming out on this windy evening. I'm Jan Brown, and I have lived in the city of Loveland for 24 years. I have served on City Council from 1999 to 2007, and I would like to serve the community for another 4 years. I enjoyed being on council. I am on many boards and commissions. I'm married to Stephen Brown, and we have 3 children, and it's very important to me that we keep the quality of life that we have always experienced here. I was a small business owner for 15 years in the downtown area, so I know the importance of keeping small businesses viable, and they're very important to our community. So thank you again for coming, and hope you enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klassen?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Daryl Klassen. The format that I was prompted to follow says, why are you running for this office? I can answer that in a simple sentence. My entire career has been involved with public involvement. That started from a degree in journalism, in which my career ambition was to replace either Chet Huntley or Walter Cronkite. I emanated from that into broadcast ownership, which is what brought me to Loveland. Once I saw the city of Loveland in 1960, I had to own this radio station. It took me 10 years to get it bought. I was the owner, operator, and janitor of radio stations KLOV in Loveland, AM and FM. And in the meantime, after operating the facilities for 13 years, I sold them happily at a profit. And in the meantime, became a county commissioner for 8 years. I've been a 3-year member of the city council. I've prioritized, formulated, set, met, and adhered to approximately $1 billion worth of budgets. The most important issue that I've been able to do in my private business experience and in governmental experience is prioritize, taking the amount of revenues that we have available and making them try to match what we have. I have council liaisons to many different boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klassen. Mr. Konecki?
Good evening. Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this forum. Why am I running for office? Well, first let me say my name is Adam Konecki, and I'm sure the question you're all wondering, I'm 23 years old. A lot of the people up here have 35 or 40 years of experience. What I think that I bring to the City Council is that I've lived in Loveland for 21 years. This is the only town I've ever known, and I've had the opportunity to see the town grow up around me, basically. And it's such a wonderful place to live, and I would really feel honored to be able to represent it and to represent a future generation of people who will be living in this town. Prior to this, I worked as a machine operator down in Longmont, and I've worked in a couple volunteer organizations around town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Konecki. 2 candidates are running for the City Council representing Ward 2. They are Mr. Bob Snyder and Ms. Joan Schaefer. We'll start with Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. I'm not 23. As mentioned, my name is Bob Snyder. I'm running for City Council because I believe in Loveland. I think it's the jewel of northern Colorado. I'm running because I think it's important to serve in the community that I live and I work in. Over the last year, I've seen a lot of friends, neighbors, and clients that have left Loveland to move to other parts of the country to follow a job because they got laid off from their employment in the area. I'm tired of seeing that. I think that's wrong. People should be moving into Loveland. It's one of the best places to live in the country. All the magazines say it. We know it. We live here. We should see more jobs, more good companies moving in with primary jobs that will pay a livable wage that families can live and thrive on. I'd like to see a vibrant economic community, including a redeveloped downtown. I think it's important, if elected, for all of our representatives to remember we are representatives. We're here to listen to our neighbors, our constituents, the citizens of Loveland, and represent them. It's important to avoid unintended consequences by well-intended legislation and policies. It's important to understand the issue completely and understand all sides of the issue and vote for what's most important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Snyder. Ms. Schaefer?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters member volunteers and our moderator tonight, Sidna Rashid, for your generosity in organizing tonight's forum. I'm running for the Ward 2 seat on the Loveland City Council because I think I will fully and fairly represent the people of the district and the city. I'm a competent and capable person with the professional experience necessary to do the job well. I have made my career as a financial and business manager and have worked with small startups and large centuries-old institutions. I can't say I haven't been doing it for 35 or 40 years yet. I'm accustomed to handling budgets and contracts and managing other people's money. I'm a fiscally prudent decision maker who will safeguard your tax dollars. Both my husband and I are now downtown small business owners. I have a public relations firm, and like many of you, I know firsthand the hard work it takes to turn a dream into reality, to meet payroll, and to keep your head above water. Most importantly, however, I believe in you and your family's desire for our community to not just maintain the current quality of life, but to improve it for all of us. All sectors of our community bring value and vitality to the city, and I will serve all fairly, openly, and transparently. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For Ward 3, there are 2 candidates since Janet Bailey has dropped out of the race. They are Mr. Joseph Hertwig and Mr. Hugh McKean. We'll start with Mr. Hertwig.
Thank you, League of Women Voters. I'll start out the way I'm comfortable with starting out. This is your captain speaking. I'm running for Ward 3 City Council because it's my time to serve. 30-some-odd years ago, about 30 years ago, when I went into the Navy, I went in the Navy to serve my country because that was the thing to do. That's how I grew up. That's, I didn't know anything else. That was just what I wanted to do because I felt that was the right thing to do. I feel it's now my time to serve the city of Loveland. I look at the origins of our nation and Thomas Jefferson's vision for governance. He felt that the people that govern the nation, govern the cities, whatever, come from the businesses, come from the farms. They leave their homes, they go to the capital, they do their duty, they return home. They're of the people. I think another reason, I think Plato said it best. He said one of the penalties for refusing to take part in politics is you end up being governed by your inferiors. I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to run for this office.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McKean?
Well, good evening, and thank you again to the League for hosting us tonight. This is my wedding anniversary, my 19th, so you can assume that we're somewhat committed to public service. She said, all right, go, you got to do this. So happy anniversary to Kristen. We've got 2 little kids, and certainly we're invested here. We've got an 8 and a 10-year-old, and I don't think anybody sitting up here would say that they don't absolutely love where we all live. And I'm running because I love this town. I love my neighbors. I want to serve them. I have a small business here doing home repairs. I also volunteer with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I get to do things in the community with that. So this is an extension of the kind of service that I've grown to love doing and enjoy doing for the citizens of Loveland. I can't wait, if they want me to do it, to serve the residents of my ward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. For 2 candidates would like to represent Ward 4. Carl Fritz has dropped out of the race. They are Ms. Kathleen McEwen and Ms. Terry Volk. Would you like to start, Ms. McEwen?
Yes. My name is Kathleen McEwen. I'm a local business owner. I have a law practice down on 12th and Lincoln in the old Miss Addie's tea house or tea room. And I've been here since 2000. I was raised to believe that when you see a need in the community and you have the skill to meet that need, you step up to the plate and serve. In talking with people in the community and in Ward 4, it is apparent to me that folks would like an independent voice on council. They would like to bring balance to council. They would like preservation of fairness and decision-making on council. And they would like to be represented. I have those skills and I'm ready to serve. I have a bachelor's degree in finance, a law degree, and I'm trained in mediation. I've also worked in all of those fields. As an attorney, I routinely analyze large amounts of information, cut to the chase, and engage in problem solving. As a mediator, I listen to both sides very carefully, and then I try to determine what the dispute is between the parties and help them resolve their differences in a mutually beneficial way. Regardless, though, of what hat I wear, my background in finance, law, and mediation will ensure that decisions reached by City Council will be attained only after careful scrutiny of all necessary information to make the educated decisions that are in the best interests of our community.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. Ms. Volk?
Hello, my name is Terry Volk. These surroundings are very familiar to me. For the last 5 years, I've come into this building, into these council chambers, and have sat in the same chairs serving the Construction Advisory Board. Once a month for the last 5 years I've been in here. 2 of those years I've served as Vice Chair for the Construction Advisory Board. I'm ready to serve City Council because of my experience and my abilities through this Construction Advisory Board. Without a doubt, I can say I would not be prepared to serve on council if it weren't for my extensive experience through the CAB. Prior board experience has introduced to me to the city government, the workings, the negotiation. The experience in particular that I have is working with the city in legal issues, defining city building code, regulation of subdivision and improvements, working with city, I better speak faster, working with the city manager, city finance department. I have been a Loveland resident for 16 years, and during that time I've also been a small business owner. I'm a home builder. I had a personal chef's service, and currently I am working as a geriatric social worker, working with hospice and helping families go through the aging process. Through my service as a Construction Advisory Board and as a business owner, I have been able to establish strong relationships with an assortment of city officials that I expect to deal with as a City Council member.
Thank you very much. And could I request that everyone try to stop when she holds the stop up? I mean, you can finish your sentence, but if you can just kind of follow the time limits, I would appreciate it. Okay, we'll start with the first question, and that will go to Mr. Klassen. And the same question will be asked of all of you. What policies should the city follow to make sure that growth pays for itself?
The policy that the city has followed for the past several years is one that has been very productive for our community. We have 10 funds called capital expenditure funds. These are fees that are collected at building permit time, in which the city collects in advance for those services that we're going and facilities that we're going to need in the future. I can tell you how well these policies have worked for the city, because at this time, and this figure is a little bit staggering when you hear it, the city has developed a $180 million portfolio. This is money in the bank, money in our hands, that will be used. These are designated funds, however. You cannot collect funds for a police and fire building and then use it for the general fund. Those funds are constricted within that particular category for which they were collected. So the policy in preparing for growth is very simple. Our city has set these funds in place. They have been a leadership role that have been played by other communities, and it's why at this time, when you can look at California, who's looking at trying to find $26 billion for things that they want to do, Loveland has collected for them in advance. They are in a portfolio, they're drawing interest, and when the time comes, if the general fund will permit the expenditure to operate these funds, we've got the money to build them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klassen. Mr. Konecki, the question is, what policies should the city follow to make sure that growth pays for itself?
Well, I think it's first off, it is very important that growth does pay for itself. Policy-wise, for the most part, I've seen that it does, in fact, that any growth here does in fact pay for itself. There are some exceptions to that, and I think that for the most part, the developers that build things need to be held accountable to their developer fees and to any obligations that they have taken on towards what they will do with their area once it is built. I think it's very very important that they follow up on that and that it not have to revert back to the city if they fall short of meeting those goals. I think that by and large the city has maintained growth funding itself, and a lot of the policies that are in place are working. We just need to focus on that and make sure that they continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Snyder, the same question. What policies should the city follow to make sure that growth pays for itself?
Thank you. The city has had a variety of policies that have been in effect to collect revenue from the developers when projects are to be built. Largely, I think these policies have been good. They've brought in the funds. When you look at Loveland as compared to some of our neighbors in northern Colorado and around the rest of the country, we're not in as bad a shape as many of these other communities. We still have financial issues, we still have problems, but we're weathering much better than many of our neighbors. You know, it's been said before, growth is neither good nor bad, it just is. But I believe if we're not growing and thriving as a community, the other alternative is that we're dying. So we must find ways to encourage good growth and good development and continue to allow the growth to pay for its own way.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Schaefer?
I think one of the things that I would be concerned with, I think because of my financial background, is we need to always make sure that we're keeping a careful audit of the costs that were expensed in those CFEs, the money we're collecting. Are we collecting the right amount of money? Are we collecting the right amount of money for the right purpose? I think we've done a good job of building a nest egg. But those are generally for projects. They're to be used in future projects, and are they really going to meet the needs that development or a development actually brings to the table? So the other side of it is, I think we also need to routinely and regularly audit whether or not we're really paying as we go. And I think that there are some good minds in the community who think that there's a possibility that we're not meeting that. And so I think that would be one of the things that I would want to get involved with as a council member, is to really take a look at that and make sure that we've got the right structure to truly pay as we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hertwig?
As Mr. Clausen so eloquently pointed out, the city already does have a very excellent program with the capital expansion fees. Of course, any system needs to be continually audited and updated and reviewed. But as it stands now, I believe the system that city does have and has had for quite a while is maybe not the ideal system, but I think it is an ideal system.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. McKean?
Well,
do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I'm
okay.
fine. I think that the CDEs that we've been collecting are good. I think that we have two really basic needs, and one is to support that infrastructure and to plan for how that infrastructure is going to connect to the later developments. The problem is that one size doesn't fit all, and if we want to make a fair playing field, it's difficult to say that this is going to be your set development expansion fee. And I think that that's one of the things we need to look at. Downtown we have very different needs than we have out on the perimeters for housing developments and things like that. So in the end, I think we've got the right structure. I think we just simply need to make sure that we apply it in the best way for each case as they come up. And certainly with what we're looking at as far as what would most of us I think would like to see as far as downtown revitalization, maybe we need to rethink about how we do things down there and what those fees can specifically be used for.
Thank you. Ms. McEwen?
Well, as I understand it, there's a study that is due out at any time. It may have already come out, but it's evaluating the effectiveness of reductions of CEFs for businesses and what they should be set at, et cetera. And I don't have the benefit of the results of that study, and I probably would rely on such a thing. But just based on the knowledge that I have at this time, I really think a concern is that before we allow reductions in CEFs for any businesses, that we engage in due diligence and that we investigate on an ad hoc basis, case-by-case basis, if you will, how each company, what the proper CEF would be for that company. I don't know that we can even do industry standards or compare ourselves to other cities. And I think that the study that's about to come out will go a great way in helping us to determine whether the current reductions in CEFs are sufficient to support our infrastructure needs and whether they're prudent to engage in. And I think that's probably the mechanism, the driving mechanism for growth and growth paying for itself.
Thank you. So I'll repeat the question now because it's been a while. What policies should the city follow to make sure that growth pays for itself? Ms. Volk?
Well, capital expansion fees have been reduced. Building prior to building kind of going bust in the area, both commercial as well as residential, the city's been able to rely upon large amounts of money, income coming in for our building fees, our capital expansion fees. However, we all know that commercial as well as residential construction is down drastically, very dramatically. We're not seeing the number of building permits that are coming through the system anymore. So to rely upon building permit fees to continue to sustain our budget is something that we can't any longer continue to rely upon. I would go more of the route as far as bringing in jobs to the community, to support our community, to bring in income from there. And so I think that building permit fees and capital expansion, that's really shaky ground. So for me, job creation, bringing in new jobs, viable, sustainable jobs is the way to go.
Thank you very much. So Ms. Brown, you will be the last to answer that. What policies should the city follow to make sure that growth pays for itself?
Well, I think I agree with the others. The CEF fee program has been very important to this community. I moved here in '85, and at that time, our community, most of it had moved to Fort Collins when the mall opened up there. And downtown was literally boarded up. So they began to start trying to encourage businesses to come here and trying to, we were looking for growth. And but the capital expansion fees were put into place in the late 80s when we began to grow again. And I think we did this prior to many other cities in the state. So we have stayed ahead of the curve. Loveland has been very progressive. The city staff does an incredible job of staying up with the other communities and keeping that information coming in so that we are always on top of what is happening. So I believe in the capital expansion fees, and I think it's something we have to look at annually to make sure that we are staying within the realm with other communities and that it's working for us.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Konecki for the second question. Do you support economic incentives for commercial development for job creation? There's two parts to that question.
Yes and no. I'm very much in favor of tax incentives and such for new businesses coming in, being able, either charging them less taxes or allowing them to charge less sales tax as a way to draw in new business. I am not in favor of cash incentives. I think that's a very dangerous route to go, very slippery slope to start down, if you will. And the reason why is that can lead to government picking and choosing who are winners and who are losers, what business they think should succeed. But as far as providing an incentive for a new business to come in, or for an existing business to grow, or even for an existing business to stay here, if they are providing jobs and we can get them to stay as opposed to leave or to shut down, I would consider that to be a priority. So tax incentives would be my big thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Snyder, do you support economic incentives for commercial development for job creation?
Yes. I think there's breaking that question down. The job creation part absolutely. Having good primary jobs and a thriving economy, a thriving workforce, it's so critical to just about everything we do in Loveland, from my family to my neighbors to the city as a whole. So certainly for job creation, it's important to do those. You take the other side of that, we're all concerned about a thriving downtown, having some good incentives for the development downtown. That's necessary to help redevelop that, to be strategic in that. It's important to have a policy that's fair, that's accessible to all, but every situation is unique. That's why we have a body of 9 individuals that sit up here and make decisions on behalf of our community. If it was a formula, we'd have robots. But we need people to investigate and understand the dynamics of each of those situations, to do good incentives and good development for those specific items.
Thank you very much. Do you support economic incentives for commercial development and for job creation? Ms. Schaefer.
Absolutely. I think incentives are very useful tools and really can help make sure that a project is viable. To me, the most important caveat in that is that the taxpayer must be protected. So when we use those incentives, we need to make sure that the risks that we take are as minimal as possible, and that it's a fair process as well. I think that we also need to consider where incentives are best used. Incentives are really needed in developing the downtown. It's 15 to 20% more money to develop down in the downtown area. You've got to deal with existing business buildings and plumbing issues and all of those sorts of things. So it's an expensive place to build, and I think incentives there are really critical. It's far less expensive to build on a cornfield, and so I think we need to be careful when using those incentives, make sure that they're doing the best that we can do with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hertwig, do you support economic incentives for commercial development and for job creation?
I believe cash incentives do have a place. I'd prefer to see tax and fee incentives first. The cash incentive down toward the bottom of the priority list. But then I view it as a type of investment. What's the city and the surrounding community going to get back? What's its rate of return going to be on any money that is given out? So basically, yes, I do favor cash incentives, but with definitely some caveats. I don't want to see too large of a burden or minimal burden put on the backs of the taxpayers.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean, do you support economic incentives for commercial development and for job creation?
I certainly do, and I think that the biggest part of that equation is the job creation. what we're looking for, and Bob mentioned it, is primary jobs here in Loveland. We need people who come here to do a job, who are going to then spend their money in this community. And I think that that's the biggest place we have for them. And I think that there's a full palette of tools that we can use with incentives. Certainly, I would have had my own disagreements with some of the URAs that we've gotten into, and I think that they're part of the tools you can use, but I think that we really, having kind of seen that process through, we really need to look at the backside as far as exactly what we're looking at. Are we going to offer cash? Are we going to provide a partnership with businesses for up to 25 years or so is what we're looking at on some of those. So I think that we have to do it. I think that it's something that any employer is going to look at coming here. But I also think that as we do that, we need to really investigate all of the ramifications down from that, and certainly educate our community as to how we're making those decisions.
Thank you very much. Ms. McEwen, do you support economic incentives for commercial development for job creation?
Yes, but not just with blind faith. And I think these are all very good points, but I think that there are a couple of areas of concern. One is when a company is requesting a cash incentive, has it been studied carefully? Does it have a sound financial picture? Have its statements all been reviewed? Should it be a company that you incentivize in the first place? And then secondly, I think there should be clawback provisions that are sufficient to minimize the risk to the city. And hindsight's always 20/20, but I think recent events make that concern all the more present. And so those are some of the concerns that I have. I'm not going to restate what other people have stated. So I would say, generally speaking, yes, I support them, but with a couple of concerns that I would want addressed.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Volk, do you support economic incentives for commercial development for job creation?
Absolutely, I do. I think job creation for Loveland is a very huge, very, very big issue. As a prior small business owner, I can personally say that it is very difficult to start up a company on your own, as well as large corporations. There's considerable risk involved in that. You need to offer incentives to give people the ideas to come into Loveland, to develop their businesses, to bring jobs to Loveland. We need job growth. We need high-paying job growth, not just, our retail sector is great, but we cannot rely upon our retail sector to pull us along. We need to have some companies like Hawk, like Heska, corporations that come in that are all-encompassing, where they create jobs for engineers and material handlers, people, and manufacturing and production all in one. Not just an engineering company where we send everything overseas after it's produced, but we need to have high-paying positions within Loveland, high-paying companies that will be offered incentives that can help with our community with these high-paying jobs for a diverse group of people.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Brown, do you support economic incentives for commercial development for job creation?
Yes, I do. They have worked well for this community. We have a brand new hospital. We have a cancer wing at McKee and a lot of new medical technology in the community. We're way ahead of a lot of the medical things that we have here now. We're ahead of all the communities around us. And those were all brought here through incentives. So I feel that it is very important. Those are all high-paying jobs. I feel that we could bring in many more high-tech jobs through incentives, and I think jobs are very important to us right now. So yes, I do support those.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klassen?
I think the nature of the question deserves a description of what sort of competition that we're engaged in. Whether anybody realizes it or not, the whole world is looking for high-paying, quality jobs. We are in a global competition, and it is a fierce one. It is a deadly game we're playing. I sat right here in a study session when this whole council was looking at improving our economic development techniques and job creation. And I asked one question. Your question is based upon, should we support economic incentives for job creation? And so that prompted me to ask a question of our economic specialists. Are we in an auction? In other words, we'll give you $5 million if you'll come to our community. Understand that the answer coming back out of this is so much broader than incentives. Much broader. Companies that are relocating are looking for many different factors. They're looking for quality of life, education, schools, parks, climate, entertainment abilities, cultural facilities. They're looking for transportation arteries. They're looking for what kind of utilities do you have in this community. Now, there's another thing that they're looking at that this community has been pretty good at. Time is money to these corporations, and they are not looking for governmental hurdles, for hoops to jump through. Time is money. So are we in an auction? In a sense, yes, but there are so many other factors involved in luring these jobs to our community.
Thank you very much. The third question is, what is your position on the council's role in downtown renovation? And we'll start with Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. The council's position on downtown renovation, council has a key role in that. We've all said up here, neighbors, even the newspaper, 25 years ago, a new downtown team was formed to look at redeveloping downtown. So it's not a new issue. So the council has a big role in that, to remove hurdles, remove barriers, encourage private development, help to create those destinations that have been talked about, possibly by clustering properties that can be jointly redeveloped to make a bigger, better attraction that the private sector may come in and do, and then providing the infrastructure necessary to let that happen. But council has a big role in that, eliminating hurdles, providing strategic incentives, developing the leadership and the vision to allow the private sector to thrive.
Okay, thank you very much. What is your position on the council's role in downtown renovation, Ms. Schaefer?
I think that the city council has a large role. I definitely agree with Mr. Snyder, and I'm all for the development of downtown. I'm new to Loveland. I've been here since 2005. I've been in Colorado since 1994. But downtown, it was clear to me when I moved here that downtown and its neighbors are where newcomers and what I call natives meet and make a revitalized community every day. I think that there's rich history here, that new hopes that create a vision for the future, that opportunities for new investment to development employment centers and varied housing stock, unique restaurants, retail. I think those are all things that the City Council can help with. But one of the things that I see about downtown, and actually former Congressman Hudnut mentioned it when at the Destination Downtown event, is that we have a real gem in our community in the downtown with the existing rail line, the existing BNSF line, and the possibility for commuter rail and passenger rail. And that's sort of the elephant that isn't in the room, and it's not being talked about. And I know that where that kind of transportation has been employed, property values have gone up significantly, particularly for commercial property. Employment centers are developed. The kind of density of housing that we're talking about can happen. So I think that's something that the City Council really needs to play a strong role in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hertwig, what is your position on the Council's role in downtown renovation?
I believe the Council should act as a facilitator. I'd like to see a strong, thriving downtown as much as everybody else would, but I want to see it done correctly. I think the true vision lies in the minds of the building owners and the business owners, because they're the ones that ultimately will profit from any major renovation or redesign of downtown. We should look to those people, to the investors. What do they have in mind? What do they want to do? And the City Council should be there to guide, get people together, maybe steer in the right direction, and to provide guidance. But the final true source of what happens in downtown should be, again, with the businesses and the building owners. It's their property, it's their livelihood, it's their life. They provide the jobs.
Thank you. Mr. McKean, what is your position on the council's role in downtown renovation?
Well, I echo a lot of what Joe said. Councils are transient. We are elected for 4 years, and the collective vision of a council will undoubtedly shift over time. One of the things that I think has been a little bit of a double-edged sword is that we do have properties downtown, and we are bundling properties to make them more attractive to developers. That's a good thing. At the same time, I don't want to see the city in the landlord business. And I would like to see that be something where we have a sunset to that, to say, all right, we can do this, we can help bring in development, but then let's get out of the real estate business. As that collective vision on the council changes, you're going to look to these business owners and these property owners to say, this is what we want downtown. And I just think over the last few years we've seen a delightful shift. My parents-in-law came here, we moved here 13 years ago, and they said, boy, there are a lot of pawn shops downtown. Well, guess what? There are a lot of restaurants downtown. There are a lot of music venues downtown. We have already seen such a progression in what's going on down there, and I'd like to see it continue. I'd like to see us let them guide us.
Thank you very much. Ms. McEwen, what is your position on the council's role in downtown renovation?
Well, downtown redevelopment is actually in the comprehensive master plan. So City Council has a stated interest in downtown. And I think what we need to talk about is how we can get downtown thriving. And obviously we've got to increase residential density, and we've got to encourage economic development in the downtown area. I think that there are a lot of things that can be done, like different uses for the fairground. Somebody mentioned to me there are a lot of RVs that come in on the 34 corridor, and they don't have anywhere to park, so then people don't come downtown to use downtown. I think there are many things that City Council can do to encourage that kind of thing to happen. I think it's encouraging that ArtSpace is doing a study on possibly putting housing, affordable housing together, that first preference would be to artists. That's one of the things that I think is encouraging. The facade program, I think, is encouraging. I think City Council plays a big role in what's going to happen in downtown. And I think it's important to the city because it's the heart of the city.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Volk, what is your position on the council's role in downtown renovation?
I believe that City Council should play a huge role in the revitalization of downtown. I believe that like she'd said before, we don't need to develop every little cornfield we see, but what do we have downtown? We have buildings that already have the infrastructure in there. Plumbing, the heating, the building is there, the parking is there. We already have issues with the buildings that are down there. Let's utilize what's there. I've spoken to many business owners personally about parking. That is a huge issue downtown for the business owners. They feel as though we need to provide more parking downtown, whether that be a parking structure or individual lots located throughout the city. Certainly that's in the development stages in there. But we need to have vibrant retail downtown. With the vibrant retail and the increase of community members shopping downtown and being with the restaurants downtown, it will help increase property values with the residents that are down there. I think that also economic incentives for businesses that are down there. There's the First National Building, Interweave Press was down there. They were not looking, when they first originally came on, they were not looking for financial incentives. They were looking for just some restrictions with the building department and parking. So
Okay.
I believe that we have a big role to play in that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brown?
You don't need to read
Okay. You've got it memorized?
I think everyone knows that I have been on every downtown board, committee, volunteer, baked cookies, everything that I could do for downtown for probably the past 16 years. That was the original reason I ran for council in '99. I was a small business downtown and felt that it was very important that that be developed, and it is the heart of our city. The city of Loveland is one of the major employers down here. We have our library, our museum, the Chelsea Center. We have some wonderful things in downtown, and I feel that it is very important that those things be expanded on, developed. We have a downtown committee that I also serve on that is working very hard and has for the last 2 years, almost 3 years, on developing programs for downtown to help get it developed. So I am a strong supporter of downtown, and I do feel that the city has been very involved in that. So, and I've seen more happen in the last 4 or 5 years than I've seen in 20. So I'm hoping that continues, and I hope to be a part of it.
Thank you. Mr. Klassen?
Should Loveland, City of Loveland, be a partner, a facilitator, a stimulator as far as downtown revitalization is concerned? Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the best ways that I like to go about things, you're going to go spend $34 million on something, I like to really make sure that you hit the nail on the head. Don't like to spend that kind of money and not get the job done. Therefore, my technique has been, I like to see what other successes have done. What did they do to make their revitalization successful? And the other part of that question is, what didn't they do? And in my judgment, this is one of the things, some very good things are happening downtown, the most important of which is land assimilation. Very, very important. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that business looks for, they like for government not to impose hurdles. They like to see government that is wanting to do what the developer doesn't have to go through a myriad of hurdles to accomplish. Downtown is looking for what I call a whale. A whale is a very large developer, and we're trying to facilitate them coming in. But there are some things in this $34 million plan that I think are a very serious error. I don't think we focused enough on creating destinations, reasons to come downtown.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Konecki, what is your position on the council's role in downtown renovation?
Kind of to echo what's been said up here by Mr. Snyder and Mr. Clausen, eliminate hurdles, get government out of the way, and allow businesses to thrive. I shop a lot downtown, and one thing that I see there is how can we attract more people? How can we get more people into the downtown area and keep them there, so that they, maybe if they come down for a meal at one of the fine restaurants down there, how do we let them know that there are other things to do down there? Another thing that I think that needs to be done downtown is there needs to be a big attraction or attractions that draw people in from other cities. And finally, the last thing that I would say down there is there's a lot of empty buildings. I know Davidson's, the old car dealership, is not far from there. There's other car dealerships around here that they've moved out east or whatever, and their buildings are still sitting vacant. How can we attract people into those buildings? And like I stated earlier, I'm not in favor of cash incentives, but being able to lower the taxes for those, maybe even for 5 or 10 years, I think would work very well to attract people here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Ms. Schaefer on this one. And this is from one of the audience members. And winter is coming. Last year, Loveland provided a shelter that opened only when the temperature dropped below 29 degrees. The reason I mention it's from the audience is they weren't sure about the exact temperature. That seems cruel. What would you support?
I think that the community has the need and the wherewithal through partnerships with the religious community, the nonprofits in the area, and the city government, the city council, to provide shelter for people in the winter. Many of our homeless now, in this day, in this economy, are working poor. They need to be able to maintain their lives and their children in ways that they can still get to their jobs while they're involved in transients and housing. And certainly there's chronic poor in our community, and those folks are sometimes resistant to a shelter, but I think it's the absolute humane thing to do that we have a shelter year-round throughout the winter months and in any kind of inclement weather or other community emergency.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hertwig, I will read the question again. Winter is coming. Last year, Loveland provided a shelter that opened only when the temperatures dropped below 29 degrees. That seems cruel. What would you support?
I'm kind of in agreement as far as I believe the local religious community and the local charities should be the primary source of assistance for the homeless. Yeah, I know 29 degrees, yeah, sure. Yeah, that does sound cruel, yes. I wouldn't want to be out in the cold like that either. But I think it's important that the city spend its resources wisely, not just to say, okay, we have this shelter here, it's going to be open, year-round, everybody, please come and, take part. The city has limited budget as far as what it can afford. Again, that's why I lean more toward the religious and charitable organizations to provide more of a service than the city would.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
Well, I read in the paper last year how much the shelter gets used in the cold winter months, and I'm delighted that we have it. I'm delighted that we have a place where people can go to get out of bad weather, especially in the cold months. I think that we run the risk of creating I don't want to, the old swimming pool term, you had to build a fence around a swimming pool because it was an attractive nuisance. I don't want to ever see us having a shelter that then the city is responsible for having it open 365 days a year. I think that what we have tried to do is show our compassion in a very resourceful and a very productive way to say, when it's cold out, when it's snowing, when it's just those days that you really cannot survive outside, we will give you a place to be. And I think that's desperately important. I think also that if we make a decision at some point to say, well, we're going to have a shelter that's open 24 hours a day and provide a home for people to come and rebuild their lives from, I think that's a very dangerous place to go when you say, are we going to then say we want to bring people here to rebuild their lives in that way? I think we're offering our compassion in a good way. I think we should keep doing it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McEwen?
Well, I'm of the belief that it isn't acceptable to leave people out in the cold. And I think that we could take some of the resources in the community. There's Angel House, there's the Interfaith Hospitality Network, which is the churches that unite and provide shelter for homeless families. We have to recognize poverty is a very serious problem. Today's newspaper headline story, and many people who are out of work are homeless. And I think we have to recognize it's not a character flaw. And I think that we engage in private and public partnerships. I think we would be able to come up with some sort of a creative solution to the problem, because I think just letting it be is not sufficient. We're a civilized society. And I don't believe in necessarily draining the public coffers to do it, but I do think we have to come to the table and come up with a solution and work on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Volk, winter is coming. Last year, Loveland provided a shelter that opened only when the temperature dropped below 29 degrees. That seems cruel. What would you support?
Well, you know, Loveland is growing. There's no doubt about it. We're getting larger all the time, and with that comes an increase of population of homeless people. With winter coming, it certainly is. Last winter, too, was a harsh winter. It was a pretty serious issue. I agree with everyone else on the board. You know, partnering with communities, with churches, nonprofit organizations that help with clothing and job assistance that we have. Those are all very important issues that we continue to seek, as well as the shelter that we have that's available.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I agree with everyone that we do need to do something. We were looking at this issue. I don't know that we were looking at it. We were hearing this issue when I was on council, and I believe that it needs to be looked at more than what it is. It is not just about people who do not have a place to live. It is about people not just that have lost their jobs. You can open a shelter, which the city has helped provide the last few years, but if you're a drug addict, you're on the street. If you're an alcoholic, you're on the street. So those people, it's okay for them to freeze to death. But everyone else can come in. So this is a bigger problem than what we are really looking at. It's a lot of mental health issues, not just jobs. So there's more to it than just opening a building and bringing people in to keep them warm for the night. If we're going to do this annually, we need to look at, one, what is causing this, and how can we really, truly work through this to help all and not just some.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klassen.
This is an ever-increasing problem across the United States. The phrase that is being used very prominently now is called a sanctuary city. This question and this debate at times can get very, as the question states, heartless. At what point do you make facilities available to the point that you perhaps become a sanctuary city? I think this city and this council has measured very carefully our program for this, which is why we have rented the facility. It was downtown. We caught a lot of grief from merchants there who didn't like the appearance of certain individuals that were standing around there. Moved the location, and it has proved to be very successful. We keep a very close count on the residents there. We also know that through the wonderful efforts of our religious community, that there are meals being provided. What would I support? I am supportive of exactly what this community, this council is doing at this time. We're making certain that there are individuals who, when the weather gets brutal, they have a place to be at night, and they have meals during the day through the wonderful effort of our religious community, and you cannot praise them enough.
Thank you very much. Mr. Konecki, would you like me to repeat it? No. Okay.
Real quick, I'd like to say that I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to travel to Washington, D.C., and as Mr. Clausen said, they are very much a sanctuary city, and the homeless population there is huge. One of the churches I used to attend, they worked very closely with the Interfaith Hospitality Network, and I would like to see that be able to grow more. I would like to see it become more of the religious community helping them and providing more for them rather than the city. So I guess I would support the city helping to support the churches to support the homeless people. Another thing that I think we need to tie in with that is having some way of helping these individuals to get back on their feet themselves, to find jobs for themselves, to find a place for them to live permanently, so that they can provide for themselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. I've got the question.
Okay.
It's just tough to go last. All the bright and witty things have already been said. First of all, I'm compassionate. I do care, and I think it's very tragic for anyone that is homeless, whether temporary or certainly even for a longer period of time. I think Jan alluded to it, that homeless is really a symptom of something else that's probably going on in that person's life, whether it's an addiction or a job problem or a abusive relationship. There's probably so many other things going on. It's not just needing a bed. Having said that, I think that's so far out of the role of what a city government is responsible for. It's tough to be compassionate and say that. But as has also been said, we have a wonderful faith community in town and some fantastic nonprofits. It's already been said, IHN, HNS, the block grants that the city gives to many of those nonprofits, the waiver of fees that have been done to the community kitchen, and Meals on Wheels, so they can relocate and make a better facility. I'm more comfortable with the city providing help in those roles, fostering the nonprofit community to allow help in ministry to those people that are most in need, and I think that's best done through the nonprofits that are in that business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This will probably be the last question, and we'll start with Mr. Hertwig. And I think we're a little pressed for time, so don't feel you have to take the whole minute and a half.
I haven't yet. So.
Oh, I know. Do you support the lodging tax? Why? And then there's another part. Should its revenue be used exclusively for marketing Loveland and tourism, or should it have a broader use?
No, I do not support the lodging tax. I know it's easy to say, well, it's not on the backs of, we'll put it on the backs of somebody else. We won't put it on the backs of the citizens of Loveland. I guess I pose it more out of principle. Sure, yeah, it's money we could have coming in, but then it's money that we now budget with, that we count on, that we, we got this money coming in, it's 3% now, well, let's raise it to 6%, let's raise it to 10%. As you know, I'm a pilot, I travel around quite extensively, so I see some communities have upwards of 10, 15, 20% lodging tax. I personally find that offensive. I would like to see, if I'm paying this kind of tax, do I have a vote in your community now? I thought we fought a revolution on that principle of taxation without representation. So, no.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. McCain?
I'm not as quick a no. I'm opposed to what we know about it so far. And I guess I'm opposed because I think that we need to have an absolute definition of what the money would be used for. If we're going to impose a tax, which I think we should be absolutely certain that we have to impose to do a certain task, we need to know right up front where every dollar is going to be spent. We need to be able to decide, as anyone would, what marketing strategy would we employ if we start collecting this tax. And so, no, I'm not in favor of what we see. If it were to be rewritten in such a way that we could say, yes, this is exactly what we want to do with this, then I would consider it. I would also say we have to have some sunset in it. If we don't see that we are either getting a huge benefit from the marketing, or if businesses here in town say it's not working out the way we thought it would, then we need to be able to rip it off the books.
Thank you very much. Ms. McEwen?
Yes and no. On the one hand, I recognize in talking with people that I think that the citizens don't feel they've had an opportunity to have a conversation about this. And I think there's a general air of disgruntlement about the fact that it's been on the ballot twice before, and here it is again. But realistically, I recognize that a lodging tax would bring in outside money at no real burden to the existing populace. There might be some increased usage of roads, and I don't have the economics in front of me to say what that might be, but I think all in all, it would be a good thing for our marketing, for our corridor development. And so I'm saying yes and no. I respect the fact that people don't feel they've had an opportunity to have a conversation about it, but I can see benefits that it would bring to the city, and I don't think it's a burden on the citizens here.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Volk?
Well, if you wanted me to be brief, I could say what she said. I agree very much with what Kathleen said. I support the lodging tax. I see it as a revenue maker to help support the marketing of Loveland. With the marketing of Loveland, where so many people, we are the gateway to the Rockies. So many people are coming through our town. An increase in marketing, not only for the tourist dollars, but what about the people that are here on vacation, that are paying the lodging tax, that are coming through town, that are business owners. They love our town. They understand what the type of environment that we have, all our recreational opportunities, our quality of life, the atmosphere that we have here. They come through Loveland, they see this, and want to start up a business. And I think that the marketing or the lodging tax can help increase our budget for marketing Loveland. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Brown?
Yes, I do support the lodging tax. And if you get the information, it does tell you exactly what it's going to be spent for. It will be for marketing and tourism, and which covers a lot of things in this community. We have a huge art community here, and we don't market that. The city itself owns over 300 pieces of art, and we are not marketing that as something that people can come and see the talent that we have in this community. And I believe that the lodging tax will help with that. If people are on their way to Estes and we can keep them here an extra day, for every $100 that is spent, that is $300 for our community to spend on marketing and tourism and helping business here in this community. So yes, I absolutely support that, the lodging tax, and there is information out there, and I'm hoping that everyone will try to get a hold of some of that, and get the information before you vote. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Klassen?
Do I support the lodging tax? Yes. However, I have a little bit greater concern about how I feel about it. This has been on the ballot twice, and it bombed 60-40. I mean, in politics and voting, that's a slashing. It has failed twice in this community by a huge, huge margin. And yet citizens come up and say, why don't we have a lodging tax? I supported putting it on the ballot, and I'm very concerned about not so much how I feel about it, but how this community feels about it. I'll be very surprised, pleasantly surprised, if it passes. The second part of your question, can we put it to a broader use? I think the manner in which the council has put it on the ballot gives it a broader use. The hotelers here in town really wanted to put this to a use that would be confined to what they called heads on the bed, which was strictly to promote convention business. I think council has put it on the ballot in a broader measure so that we can use these funds in a broader use in promoting Loveland. Some ancillary things that are not just directed at attracting conferences to this community, but in additional uses that promote Loveland. Do I support a broader use? Yes, and I think we've put that on the ballot.
Thank you very much. Mr. Konecki?
Do I support the lodging tax? Yes, I do. I'm going to revert back to being a 23-year-old for just a second. I have on my note cards here a quote from Apu from The Simpsons. It says, "We have to charge you foreign devils more." In the last question, I stated that I recently traveled to Washington. The lodging tax there is 22%, 12.5% parking tax. Not only did I have to pay to park, I also had to pay a tax on paying to park. Suddenly 3% doesn't seem like that much. I know on the way home, when I pulled into Indianapolis, 1 o'clock in the morning, dog tired, I didn't care what the lodging tax was. I was sleeping there. And I think that the way the money is going to be used to market Loveland is a really good idea. Like I said earlier, how do we attract people into the downtown? How do we let them know things are there? And I think that this tax is a great way to fund that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Snyder?
Yes, I support the lodging tax. I don't like to pay taxes anymore, probably than anybody else does. But I think when you look regionally, when you look nationally, it's just one of those pieces that comes with travel. The benefits to the community far outweigh what any one of us pays, and just because it's not going to be me or my neighbor, doesn't mean we should have the tax. It's what's the purpose, what's it going to be used for. Marketing Loveland, it sounds great. Okay, so we get more people in the hotels, we collect a tax, and that, so what? I think the real power in the lodging tax comes from the second and third dollar that's generated off of this tax. Once we get them into town, they're going to shop, they're going to eat, they're probably going to buy some other things. So we're collecting that second generation sales tax, if you will. We're helping support some businesses that are in the community that are in that retail and tourism sector. So from that perspective, there's a lot more good that comes from a relatively small tax, and it's very beneficial overall to our community.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Schaefer?
I'm in the yes and no camp, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to vote yes for the tax. My concern is that there isn't the use of this money is limited to marketing. I'm an advocate for development in the core of our community along the Eisenhower and 287 corridors. I think they've been sadly neglected. I think that there could be things that we could do with that money broader than marketing that maybe could contribute to aiding the business owners along those corridors to do beautification projects and things like that that actually encourage those travelers to going through our community to stop and look around, be it a small sculpture park to give them a taste of what we have in the community, things like that. So I think that the limit on marketing is short-sighted, or maybe it's just what we need at this moment. Will we probably have to raise it and do some other things with the money? That might happen too. But I know when I travel, I pay it. So as a guest in my community, I guess you could pay it here too.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will wrap up, and each candidate has 1 minute. And we're going to start at the last person who gave their introduction, and that would be you, Ms. Volk. You have 1 minute to wrap up.
As I said before, these are familiar surroundings to me. Any candidate that's running for city council who has never served on a board before can only convince you that they have the answers to the questions that have been posed to us tonight. The fact of the matter is, it's a person's experience in dealing with the city and their ability to evaluate all aspects of an issue with an open mind and fairness that will produce the most qualified candidate, and that candidate is myself. I have no agenda, and I'm here to invest my time and my experience in our community.
Thank you very much. Ms. McEwen?
I guess we are. I started by telling you that I was ready to step up to the plate and serve. While I don't have experience on a board in the city of Loveland, I do feel that I have experience on other boards that are relevant, as well as a law degree. It gives me a great deal of ability to digest the kind of information that is necessary for a council person to do the job well. I'm an independent person. I make my own decisions. Nobody rolls my stone. I will do so after careful consideration of all of the evidence put before me. I do have Loveland's best interests at heart, and it would be my distinct honor and pleasure to serve the citizens of Ward 4 as councilperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean.
Well, one of the things I think we've all heard tonight is just what a servant's heart most of the people sitting up here, everybody sitting up here has. And we got to watch the mayors and realize that people are desiring to serve their community and listen to the people of their wards, listen to the people of Loveland, bring their issues to the table as well. And that's one of the things I think that I delight in, and is to listen to what people have to say, to bring their issues, and to try to represent them as best I can through everything that I do. I look forward to that opportunity if Ward 3 chooses to have me serve.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hertwig.
Thank you. I bring my 10 years experience in the military as an officer and a pilot. For leadership and management skills, I bring my nearly 30 years of flying experience for my analytical decision-making abilities. And I also think the citizens of the city of Loveland have very tough choices. All the people up here and the mayoral candidates I've been very impressed with. I would be happy to vote for any and all of them. So I've tried to keep my answers as short and to the point as possible, and I will conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Schaefer?
Well, I want to thank the League again and all of you for coming out and the opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas for the community. I've walked a lot of precincts. I've talked to a lot of voters. The things that I've brought forward today this evening relate to those items that are top of mind to the folks that I talk to when I have a door answered or talk to somebody on the street and in the business community. I'm a good listener, and I'm a good consensus builder, and I think that I bring the skills and the talents to the table that would benefit the community. And again, I want to thank also all of our candidates here, from the mayoral candidates to the council candidates. I'm very honored and humbled to be among you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder.
Again, thank you to all that have attended and to the League of Women Voters that have put this on. It's been an honor to sit up here and tell you a little bit about myself and how I feel on some issues. Just kind of recap, I've been in Loveland about 14 years. 10 of those I've had a small business. My wife Gail and I have done so many of these things in partnership, from choosing to live here as we've raised our family and started our business, the different community involvement that I have been involved in. It's much because of her support and usually against her wishes, or at least advice maybe. I've been very involved in the community since I've had my business, and it just seems like the next step to take to again serve some of the residents of the community, all of the residents of the community, represent Ward 2, and it would be an honor to serve if elected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Konecki?
Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this and for all of you for coming out. As I stated in my opening statement, I've lived here for 21 years. I'm not leaving anytime soon. This is home. And when I get asked why I decided to run for City Council, I can give answers like, oh, I felt like I needed to serve, or there's an issue that I want to change, but the biggest reason for me is when I heard that there was going to be an opening, I looked at it as this is what I have to do. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And I would just like to end with a vote for me is a vote for Loveland's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Klassen?
I think yesterday, I don't know, about 11 o'clock, noon, whatever it was, I was standing on, I think it was number 16 tee box out at Marietta Butte. And I looked at my fellow players and looked up and said, God, there must be some place better on this earth than where I'm at right now, but I wish somebody would show it to me. And that's the way I feel about Loveland and always have. From the year 1970 when I bought that radio station, and the first thing I did was run a loop, phone loop, into the city council chambers and carried for 13 years the city council proceedings from gavel to gavel. And it was a pretty boring broadcast, let me tell you. But I carried it. I've done $1 billion worth of budgeting, and I know how to prioritize. Being on city council for the past years has been easy. It's now getting tough. 3 things to remember about Darrell Klassen: common sense, and common sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Brown?
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. I would love to return to this seat to represent Ward 1. I am passionate about this community. I am passionate about our downtown. I am passionate about all parts of our community. And I feel that the 8 years that I served, I represented the whole community, not just Ward 1. And I feel that all of us, our hearts are in the right place. And what a great place to come from, that there are so many people willing to serve our community. So thank you for coming, and I look forward to serving you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank each candidate for coming tonight. It's always encouraging to see so many people who are willing to serve the community. Thank you for watching this forum, whether it was here in the city chambers or on television at home. I'd like to end the debate with a quote about democracy from George Bernard Shaw. He said, "Democracy is a device that ensures we shall be governed no better than we deserve." Please vote. Your ballot must be signed and returned to the county clerk's office by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, November 3rd. Instructions are included with the ballots. Thank you very much. Thank you.